Can you hear me well? Is this too loud? Okay, good. Just a quick clarification. Both Magda and I are from BCG Digital Ventures. It's not, if you know BCG, we're not BCG. We're just an affiliate group of BCG, and we are very different. At core, come talk to me afterwards if you want to know more. I have actually moved to Berlin quite recently, last year. I'm Polish. I have spent pretty much half of my life in the US, actually, working in LA. And I have gone through quite a bit of a career journey. I've always been around art and design. I've always been fascinated with industrial design and machines from the very, very, very young age. And I ended up my journey in actually architecture school because it kind of blended the science and the design in a kind of a nicely balanced way. After that, I actually started studying in Poland and then moved to US, went through architecture school there, and then worked as an architect for quite a few years. But when I left school, the reality of I was always interested in very experimental work. This was the area of more of a digital design, not necessarily brick and mortar. And so in architecture, there was a period where experiments and rapid manufacturing and generative design were really becoming big. And when I started working in traditional architecture field, I was missing a lot. I was missing a lot of the interaction between how can we think about spaces that are living and breathing and how people interact with that. So I ended up going back to school for industrial design. And there at Art Center, I actually ended up focusing very much between industrial design and automotive design. And in automotive design was very much focused on human-machine interaction and how we can kind of push that thinking further. I ended up working for Toyota for quite a few years in the advanced product strategy group. And there we worked on future concepts for mobility, and not only mobility, but also automation in general. Toyota has a huge, actually, robotics arm that's not necessarily as well known in Europe or US, but it's big in Japan. And so there, I really started to think more about automation, artificial intelligence, and how human interacts with the technology. So when I've heard about this conference, I thought positive tech is something that I've always been. It was always been part of me and very close to my heart. I am an optimist, so I think about technology with a big potential. And so I really hope that this workshop, and it's not going to be that long of a talk. Hopefully there's more of a conversation. This is not a technical talk. This is very much an emotional talk. How can we put emotional understanding of how people interact with systems, especially automated systems? So the beginning, I guess I mentioned I'm a positive and optimist. When I hear these lines of the rise of machines, the future has lots of robots, few jobs for humans, and we actually have heard this before in our talks. Siri talked about it yesterday. We hear this doom and gloom vision of the future where robots take over. I guess my inspiration for today is design for more of a symbiotic relationship between human and machines. And I hope we can kind of open this conversation here of how to get there. I think also what is happening is this shift between what design is today, especially what interaction design is today. And it's not necessarily UX, it's still going to be user experience design as it evolves. But I think we're moving slowly from being very much focused on a UI design, interaction design, a visual sense, to writers, poets, psychologists, character designers. It's the team of designers becoming very much diverse. And so when you ask big companies, for example, Cortana, they have basically a writing crew that is writing for Cortana. So it's a very different skill set and very different team dynamics when you think about design team in your organization. And at the very beginning, I think something worth considering as we think about this interaction, and I think if you think automated systems, we have to consider cultural context. Part of, I think, the challenge with AI today is that it does have quite a bit of negative connotation. It's a term that's been established in the 50s. Back then, artificial was something to be aspiring. But now, in a world where we have everything is organic and fresh and natural, artificial is not necessarily a positive association. So I think, in general, I think as designers, as engineers, I think we have a role to play of defining artificial intelligence in a positive way. And I think the considering cultural context is very important because the concept of artificial intelligence being something that we can be feared of, or it's never going to be good enough, is very, very true to Western cultures. The idea of the reason that humans are different from machines is the fact that they can think, and that makes them valuable. But however, when you look at Eastern cultures, and especially animist cultures, for them, everything that's not human, so animal world as well as natural world, has a soul, and that could actually be pushed even further in some of the other cultures where actually objects have a soul. In Japan, robots are considered a kind. So when we design for these systems, as we begin to think about it, we do have to take these very, very different cultural approaches into consideration. So what I wanted to do with you today is, for the past couple of years, I've been thinking about how to design these personalities behind these systems, being services, being interactions, being robots, whatever they are. And very much comes from writing, actually. The frameworks that creative writers use to think about a novel, how to create a character that you can connect with, that you can trust, and so forth. When I was at Toyota, actually, we considered a lot factors when it comes to autonomous vehicles, for example. How do we make this vehicle communicate in a way that it's trustful, but that humans don't trust too much, because then they will rely on the machine completely, and then the risk and how we deal with risk changes. So I think thinking about all of this, there's a lot of kind of elements that they can build a character or build a personality. And I'm not sure actually the numbers you can see, but usually you will start with a name, and then you have a backstory. You have a personality that comes from that backstory. You have a voice or a language that this agent could speak to you, or character speaks to you. The object or the agent has some sort of physicality to it, mannerism, how it moves, and so forth. And that with that comes behavior, a certain way that this character behaves. There are a set of values, and it's good, you might not always think about it, but if you try to really design something that can connect with the human being, you can imagine that this character has a set of values that drive its behavior. And then really important is to think about the relationship you want to create in between the agent or the character and the human being. And then I think something that maybe we can start with, so for us, I think for us as designers, as we design these systems and services, I think maybe starting with purpose is actually a really good starting point, instead of starting with the name and a backstory, because the purpose is really the reason why the character or the agent is in the world today. So we'll go through this, and I'll just kind of give you a glimpse of how to think about each one of those elements, and then the rest of the day or the rest of the time with us, we'll try to actually design this. So I mentioned, I think starting with purpose is an appropriate starting point for us thinking about interactions. For me, I think the purpose should be a clear role the character plays in a person's life. It is the reason for his or her existence, basically. So what you may be helpful to think about is to think about archetypes. If you think about designing a service or interaction, for example, for well-being or healthcare, maybe the archetype that could come to play that you can start with is a caregiver or a mother. In here, Obi-Wan Kenobi really plays that he's a very much a manifestation of that archetype in a story. So think about that. It allows you to build a very good starting point to think about all the other elements as they come along. The Nexus Relationship. So if we do, if we choose an archetype, for example, as a caregiver or a mother, and we want to design a relationship that is all about caring and trust and giving, it should be based, in general, the relationship should be based on empathy, symbiosis, and reciprocity. It's important to create this connection. It's important to also not think about just taking, for the user to just take from the system, but maybe there is some needs that the system or agent has. For example, maybe it needs charging, but maybe it needs energy. Like if we think about the needs for the character and set it and create it as a part of a relationship, we're building much stronger relationship between the user and the system. And I mentioned this before, I think it's very important to design for symbiosis. There's a really interesting work coming out of MIT that specifically focuses on robots and how to design robots so they actually ask for help and they almost self-aware. They're self-aware of what they can and cannot do. I think we are experiencing this today. A lot of these automated systems, I have Alexa or Echo at home, and very, very often I hear, I don't know how to answer that question. I don't understand, right? So this system, for a while, they're not gonna know everything. So we're gonna get to the point where we're gonna be very quickly disappointed with the capabilities or the knowledge or the availability. So if we build this set of interdependencies, there's some symbiosis that the agent could ask us for help when it doesn't know. We're establishing a very different relationship from the start. Values. Values are very important because they basically define the character, define of what this personality is and what drives it. They should be a reflection of the character nature and be based on kind of time-based principles and self-reflection almost. What you see here is actually a quote that describes Abraham Lincoln. In temper, he was earnest yet controlled, frank yet sufficiently guarded, patient yet energetic, forgiving yet just himself, generous yet firm. So if you think about these values, this is a personality type that is very much admired for his integrity and set of values. So it was very true to these values. So if you think about this, when we design this agent, design this character, again, we are establishing a very kind of firm foundation to build from. As a contrast, I think Wally is actually a good example of behavior, a set of behaviors that are manifested in mannerisms and movement. They should reflect the values, actually. And I don't want to talk about it. I kind of want to just play part of it so you can remember if you haven't seen Wally.
His name is Wally. And after all these years, he's developed one little glitch. Wow. A personality. He's extremely curious. And just a little bit lonely. But all that is about to change.
So character that his values, curiosity, relationship, care, they all come to life in every single aspect of this character design. And so that moves us to physicality. The physicality reflects all the elements that I've already mentioned. And quite a bit departure between Wally and Alexa or Echo. However, I do think that Echo has quite a few very little details, because when you design this personality, it's all about paying attention to details. This is fine interaction, mini interaction, micro interaction. What I really like actually about Echo or Alexa is the fact that when you speak, the radius of light actually addresses you. So even though it's not a very emotional design overall, because it's very simple, very almost invisible in a way, when you address it, it pays attention, and the interface is visible in that way. So it loses illumination, but it addresses you. So it's attentive. So physicality should convey the sort of, if you think almost mental or emotional state, very kind of seamlessly. Part of physicality could be voice as well. And the voice should be intimately related to the point of view of your character. I think also the context, the cultural context that I mentioned before, it's extremely important here. It's important to know that if it connects effectively with your intended audience. Is it appropriate for the cultural context? Does it use slang, or does it speak very proper? What kind of language does it use? In case of Wall-E, it doesn't actually have spoken language, but the sounds it makes and how the intonation changes, it actually creates a voice of a character. I guess I show here Morgan Freeman because he became a big personality in the AI world. And there is a reason that many choose him as this personality. As technology changes now, there's software that can basically replicate any of our voice, any of our tonality. And that technology is getting farther into being more of a natural language like sound. So think about how the intonation would change. Is it a deep voice? Is it a high-pitched voice? And how that affects and connects with all the elements we've discussed before. And overall, all of these traits, again, add up to the overall personality of the character. It should be a combination of the characteristics or qualities that form the individual distinctive character of the system or the agent. And here I would want to focus on the fact that the character itself, or the personality, there is a big opportunity here to make it unique, and this is where the personalization come in. What would respond to you or to someone else might be different. And so we should design for this customization, but also think about all the traits that make this personality unique for a specific individual. I think a lot of this we already personify objects, even in a Western culture. I put a clip here, or a quote actually from Amazon. So a person that would be buying a robotic vacuum cleaner, this is how they describe in a feedback the relationship and the robot, right? The personality of the bot is okay. It's more like a clinical, efficient nurse doing its job. It's quite cheaper as other cleaning bots, but it gets the job done. It doesn't like heater vents too much, especially larger ones, because it thinks it is falling off the ledge. It will eventually figure it out. So this is not a staged performance. This is actually a person describing the robotic vacuum cleaner. And it definitely personifies the object. It's very clear. So we are already doing that in some ways. And as we do that, I think it's very important to think about designing these things, designing the systems and interactions and agents in a polite manner. I think there is a set of principles that we should all keep in mind when we're designing for these interactions. A lot of them have to do with ethics. I'm not going to talk about ethics today because that's probably a full day of a conversation. However, I think on a very lightweight level, I think we can think about designing objects in a very polite manner. So here you can see kind of set of principles that make things polite. This is according to Alan Cooper's 14 laws of politeness. Polite thing is interested in me. Polite thing is differentiate to me. A polite thing is forthcoming, has common sense, anticipates my needs, is responsive. It talked to him about its personal problems. It's well informed. It's perceptive. It's self-confident. Stays focused. Is fudgeable. It gives instant gratification and is trustworthy. So I think these actually form a set of principles that if we all keep in mind when designing these agents, it would form a much kind of deeper and truer and trustworthy relationships between human and machine. And one of the last elements, the backstory. This is probably the most important part when it comes to forming the character. It really reflects the initial formative experiences that the character has gone through in their past. Your character, it reflects kind of the desires, fears, and motivations that drive this personality. So this is a story that you might not always know from day one. This is not something, if you're reading a book, it might be described or it might be revealed to you over time. But in designing these systems, I think it's critical to think about it because backstory in many, many ways will inform any of the other elements that I already described. And last but not least, the name. It should reflect the disposition or the temperament of the character. So you might ask yourself, what is it like to hear this name? Or what is it like to see this name written down? Does it reflect the personality of the character? Does it have a meaning? Again, the cultural context come into play in an enormous way here. Is it a global character? How is it pronounced in different languages? So beyond this kind of emotional connection to the character you created, that now you're giving it a name, there's a set of principles you need to think about for it to have a very name that is easy to relate to. So with all of that, I would like to ask you to get a little bit more active. So before we get into this, what we're going to do is we're going to pick an ordinary task or a service that could be performed by artificial intelligent personality. However, I would like for you to pick a service or interaction that's very ordinary in your life and that you perform or you interact with very often, but may need a little bit of a improvement, let's say. And then we're going to go through multiple steps of trying to define and describe what this personality is, using every single element that I've already kind of went over. So before we start, I just want to get a pulse in the room. Are there any questions? Are there any comments? Have you all worked with these principles before? No? Are you ready to start? Great. Okay. So the first thing I'll ask you to do is, once you pick the interaction or a service, write a love letter to that. Imagine that there's an agent or a character behind that interaction. So I would like for you to take 10 minutes to quietly write down a very short love letter to that personality. And to give you a little bit of a help, because I know for some it may be a little bit of a stretch, I'll give you an example of a letter that Magda and I kind of crafted together. This is a love letter to an ATM. I can't stop thinking about you. Every time I'm in a bad place and run out of cash, you are there for me. Our relationship is all about giving. I give you my card, and you give me the money. No questions asked. I feel like I see you on every street corner. You're with me wherever I go. Even in the foreign countries, your face is familiar, and you always speak my language. I love that you don't talk too much. You just say what is right in the moment. Your blue screen makes me feel safe. Apologies. Your clear typography lets me know that you'd never lie to me. Sometimes, though, you could be more supportive. I wish that when my balance was low, you would reassure me that my paycheck is coming soon. Please don't judge me. You tell me when I'm on the verge of overdraft, although you know as well as I do that funds are going to hit my account on the same day every month. When you disclose this information, I would like you to remind me that things will be looking up. This will comfort me. Perhaps instead of giving the feeling of pending doom, you could remind me that I'm getting paid soon. Get involved. We know each other for, Also, when you see my account withdrew, like the cinema the other day, perhaps you could show some interest in my life and ask me how was the Woody Allen film. Get involved. We know each other for 5 years, and sometimes you still feel like a stranger to me. Anyway, maybe we could work on this together. I wish you made me feel more special, because when it comes to money, you are the only one for me. Love, Magda. Okay, so this is just an example, a very, very quick example of a love letter to an interaction in our life. So with that, if you can take 10 minutes, gather your thoughts, and I'll circulate. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to help. Looks like most of you are almost done. So the next step is pair with someone that's sitting next to you and read the love letters to one another. If there is 3 of you, you might want to team up in 3. But just share the love letters with people that's sitting next to you. If I can ask for a couple of volunteers, few of you that would be willing to just share the love letters with the group, I think that could be quite interesting. Anybody would like to share? Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a love letter to my phone. Dear Samsung S3, I can't imagine my life without you. I love your camera, front and back, your effects, your different applications, the way you wake me up every morning at the right time and remind me to take my pills with lovely music. I love the way you're always there in my pocket, ready to answer my random questions about the weather or which song I just listened to, or if Brad Pitt is still single. But I'm afraid you have been slow lately. Sometimes you don't react to my commands, and it takes forever to open my photos. Your battery needs charging twice now. It feels you're becoming needy and possessing. You want me to take care of you, charge you, delete and format data. It should be a relationship of give and take, and lately it feels you ask for more and give less. I hope we can work this out. I don't want to replace you for a newer model. I want this to work. Love, Lenya.
That's awesome. Anyone else? Awesome. Here.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
There. You'll be next, okay?
Dear car, it is so great that you always wait for me in the same spot. If not, the phone or key drives me towards you, even if I'm lost in the parking lot. I love your welcome blinking. You seem having fun blinking, and your lights just to say hello. It's nice to have you here again. Where are we going today? Well, you know better than me where to go. You know my favorite veggie store. You know where the best coffee is, and at what time to pick up kids from school. But sometimes I tell you to go some other strange places, and you are not even surprised. You are happy to put new directions on your own on our own loft places map. You turn on favorite music, and we have the same music taste. But I wish you drink less.
Thank you.
I can't wake up without you. I need this smell at the morning to start my vital energy again. Our relationship is so simple. I touch a button and you start filling my cup, making that lovely sound on the way. Sometimes you need my help. I like to clean and refill you. I know you need this. This is the part. This is okay. This is a part of our relationship. We take care of each other.
Great. Thank you.
So what's the device? Coffee machine. Thank you.
Anyone else would love to share?
So I designed a device which is called BBC. It's baby poop cleaner. And it's going like this. Dear BBC, I would like to thank you for your support in those hard and stinky moments. Sometimes I think you do too much for me and I'm not worthy of your attention. There are moments when I know you are doing your best and I'm not appreciating you enough. I guess sometimes it happens in all relationships. Without you, life would be different, harder and more stinky. I love those moments when you literally take a bullet for me. Thanks for being with me.
Anybody else? Okay, so the next step of this is actually pair in the same groups you were in. In this group, select one of your letters that you would like to take and really design a full personality of that service interaction agent. So pick one, and we'll have 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes to design the synopsis for that personality. And to help you with that, I will leave this up as a kind of a cheat sheet to go by. But as you heard, some of those love letters, they have names. Some of them are just the clear service. So if you take the love letter as a basis, you can actually pick out elements from that love letter that help you describe the personality in a much greater detail and color. So that's the goal here. When you talked about a language, you can already think about how you would kind of characterize that language that the system talks to you. So it might be helpful, I hope you can see this, to kind of go through, and these are just some examples of what's the name, what would be the name of that AI, what would be the backstory you would create for it. So as you create this in groups, this is why you have a piece of paper on the other side of the letter, go through all the elements and try to describe to one another of what would that be. And again, just to work in groups, just select one. Select the one that you feel the most excited about. And I would love, actually, if at the end of this, some of you not only shared this with the group, but also kind of play it out. So for these of you that have the energy and are willing to, it would be great if you come up here and basically act this personality out. All right. Since I don't want to run late, because I know you are all probably hungry for lunch, and there were some challenges in getting to lunch yesterday, even though it's promised to be there. I want to make sure we end on time. Oops. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Awesome. Thanks. So I would love for you, you don't necessarily have to act it out. I understand this is a lot of pressure, but I would love for some of you to share it with the rest. So do I have a first volunteer? Okay, awesome. Be the role model, Magda.
Do I have a choice? No.
Hello. So our group, Shimon, Rafa, and I, we based on the love letter that Rafa wrote to a package delivery assistant. And our package delivery assistant is a rescued robot from the junkyard called Puggly, who's really, really ugly and really devoted because we rescued him from the junkyard. And he's smart and fun, but he's also very panicky and very frantic. And he always tries his best, and he's a little bit bipolar. So if you're not super happy with his job, he'll cry. He's small, agile, colorful, and flashy, and he's a little bit 90s in his appearance. His language is very informal, and he's very funny, and actually he will always tell you funny jokes, even if you don't want to hear any funny jokes. So he's very bipolar, sensitive, and straightforward. He just says what he thinks. He's a servant. He's an FO servant who brings him his packages every day. And that's Puggly.
Thank you. I do have a question though. What type of relationship do you have with Puggly? Because it seems like he wants a lot from you. What does Puggly give you in return?
Well, he delivers whatever you want. So like if you order something from Amazon or you order something from the shop around the corner, he'll like go and fetch it.
Okay.
And he's always on time, and he's always like does his best, and he's very small, so he doesn't get stuck in traffic. So he's always there.
Okay.
It's just that he's very needy emotionally.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Anyone else? Come on, I know you guys have some good stuff.
So we tried to write about a gender-neutral cleaning service named Pat. A gender-neutral cleaning service named Pat. Pat grew up as the eldest of 10 children in a large rambling flat. Pat's mother was usually away at work trying to keep food on the table, so Pat became the default parent, cooking, cleaning, and trying to keep the younger ones from destroying the place. These formative years have left Pat happiest when there is order, things are in their place, and no dust or smudgy fingerprints are to be found anywhere. Pat is a little OCD and gets anxious when things aren't just so. Pat doesn't really trust animals and prefers that the dog stays outside. Cats are better as they produce fur, but are generally aloof and stay out of the way. Pat loves white for its cleanliness and calming effect. Pat says what they think generally in a soft but firm tone. However, as the mess worsens, Pat's volume does as well. We had a little trouble writing in gender-neutral pronouns. We're trying to get used to that. Pat is strong and vigorous with work-roughened hands despite all of the creams. Pat frequently says everything in its place and a place for everything. Pat takes control and doesn't wait to be told what to do. As a cleaner, Pat generally finds dirt, mess, and disorder that those employ Pat may not be aware of. Pat sometimes reorganizes clothes, food pantries, and libraries without consultation. Pat always asks for feedback and confirmation on a job well done, even though Pat doesn't really require it. Compliments are generally rebuffed. Values: order, discipline, punctuality, independence, simplicity. Relationship: Pat cares deeply from afar. Pat can be warm, but requires little interaction. Purpose: to save people from their own disorder, mess, and to give them more time and energy for the other things that they care about.
Thank you. I would like to have Pat at home. Anyone else? Come on. Thank you.
So we have a universal check-in bot that knows everything about every airline and knows what airline you're checking into and their policy about luggage weight. So he's called Jack, and his relationship is a personal assistant and a backpacker friend. So he values speed, reliability, modesty. His behavior is formal, dry sense of humor, and lightheartedness. Physically, he's a former business consultant who is now traveling the world, so he's very efficient, with only the bare essentials on his back. His language is witty, dry, and factual, formal, and confident. His personality is to the point, tells you only what you need to know, and his backstory is he's a backpacker that has traveled all over the world, knows local and international airports like the back of his hand.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other volunteers? Great.
Okay. We created Mocha. She's a drag queen coffee doctor. And her purpose is to help you with coffee choices, and she's a fabulous coffee coach, and she'll give you fun, sassy tips. So Mocha is fabulous yet professional. She's smart and funny, gives you lots of puns. She's empathetic but blunt. And her background is that her parents were Italian immigrants in New York, which gives her that proud Italian flair. She's the Lady Gaga of coffee. Did I say that? Yeah. And for each coffee, she rocks a different look. So she's fun. She values honesty, information, and fun. And she's your healthy encourager and smart tip giver and sassy companion. That's it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Anyone else? Do you want to share about yours? It's sort of cool. Okay.
Okay, so our Yogimo is a yogi mat that is very smart and clever. She or he, we don't really know. We didn't discuss the gender, but it is very like coachy, very motivating and very challenging also. It's supporting the healthy lifestyle of a person that is training. It's also very elastic, very patient, but also very strong. She was, or it was taught in India in a yogi school, and it flow straight from there to us. It also verifies the movements, so corrects if something is wrong, and it also captures the goals that are reached. So, for example, you set a goal to make a different position, and when you do it, it captures the further memories. Yeah, so we are a part of a team. And then let's say it's a team because we take a lot from the mat, but we also give some data that can be used to improve the trainings and different challenges for different mats. So that's it.
Cool. Connected yogi mat. Anyone else? Okay. You're all very shy. I'm sure there's some really, really gold nuggets there. So I guess I want to hear from some of you of what you think about taking this approach as a first step in designing some sort of interaction. Because very often we get into the functionality, and when we think about more natural language, conversation-based interaction, these could be very, very complex. So when you start drawing decisions trees or flows, they can be quite complex. So I think, at least to me and to people that I worked with, this very lighthearted exercise at the beginning allows you to kind of set the mood, and also maybe you can start thinking from that foundation of what decisions this system would actually make in your favor, right? So if you create this exercise, even on a very functional level, it can inform of what interaction and how to prioritize the steps in the processes that this particular system would take. Also, I think you can hand this off being a hardware or being completely a personality, completely virtual. You can start imagining of the language, the words they will use. The tonality, if there is a voice involved, that would use. So you will start from the very kind of natural way, imagining the interaction in a functional way, but also on an emotional level. I wanted to know if any of you found this helpful, or what did you think about the exercise? Any ideas of how would you do it, or would you do it in your daily jobs? And yes, okay, good. Would you do something different? Okay. Yes. Sketch out. Yes. Yes?
I'm just
Definitely.
going to repeat.
User-
So
yeah, go
a
ahead.
good addition to that would be to make a sketch or visualize it. Yeah.
User story.
And,
So
and make a user story. And
user
we have
story.
another thought here.
Yeah, I'm just curious as like when you use this in the design process, is it only with the design team or do you use it as part of, talking with the stakeholders to have them sort of flesh something out, or with users, or where you've used it? And I mean, I think it's awesome, and I really enjoyed doing it. I'm just wondering how you've used it in practice.
Yeah. I think on a very kind of high level, what the exercise that we did today, this was very, very kind of a quick take on this. But yeah, we've used it usually with actually all stakeholders. So I think it's actually the most effective when it's done in a more of a multidisciplinary teams. Because designers have kind of a natural way to think about the world this way, but other disciplines may not, because the first step for them might be functionality, or might be the best way to execute on a specific function. So that's one, and also we have used it with clients. So we have corporate clients that are usually actually embedded in our teams. And for them, this is completely new world, especially coming from more of a business area. This is not the way they think about the world. So this actually creates a very nice collaborative exercise to get everyone kind of aligned on a vision in a very kind of natural way.
Hi, my name is Kitty, and thanks for the presentation. But I was just wondering, which of the processes you're using this exercise? It's more like, do you do the user research before to find out, like, are they going to like this product?
Yes.
Or you just make this personalized product and then afterwards you test it if they're going to use it? Thank you.
Sure. Great question. I think so. We were just designing a personality. What we usually do when we engage in any type of problem solving, we usually have end users or other stakeholders that will interact with the system, either provide the service or receive the service. We usually will craft personas to represent the user needs. And in some ways, the personas reflect some of these elements, right? They all have some sort of values. They behave in a certain way. They expect certain things. They might have, they communicate in certain language, especially they have cultural needs as well, and awareness. So all of that has to align with what you're designing here. So it's a very good question. I think the step you could take, again, would be a longer workshop, would be to kind of align the values from your personas, who you're designing for, if it wasn't for yourself like today, with the personality and the personal traits of the system or an agent. So I would say for each one of these elements, there are tips and rules of how to execute them. I'm happy to share them after, but this is just a very kind of high-level view. The steps should be the same, and they should be aligned.
So should that reflect the client's or product's brand in a way?
Good question. I guess question back at all of you. When a brand puts out a personality, Siri, Cortana, any of those, they are becoming the representation of the brand. When Toa was created and turned crazy racist very quickly, it was just an innocent bot, right? But it really reflected on the brand in an incredible way. So it is, I don't think there is, there has to be connection, and there has to be considered as part of the strategy, that for that personality to be very closely related with brand and brand values as well.
Well, from my observation, I think that some of the assistants that we can have right now from big guys had changed brands, and not always in a good way.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. But I could also imagine, for example, I'll speak to Alexa because I renamed Echo, but I have it at home and I've been using it for a couple of years. there's no necessarily, there is personality, but right now it sets alarm clock or it sets alarm to remind me of something, and it just very functionally communicates, this in some way, right? If I was if I was going to give it a little bit more personality, a little bit more emotion, I would make it into a little bit more of a carer, right? So maybe the echo would tell me, hey, the traffic is really bad. We really need to get out of bed right now. So it could become even more bossy, but in the way that she would say the exact information, but maybe different language and tonality, it would completely change my relationship I have with the system and also with the brand and how it reflects on the brand.
So do you believe that these kind of assistants are going to become like very assistants for everyone in the world in a close future? Everyone will have it at home, or it's not going to work?
I don't know if it's at home. I think
well, what's your opinion?
I think it's virtual. I think the interesting topic is there one or are there multiple?
Okay.
Right, and there's different opinions. I think my personal opinion is that there's actually multiple. Yeah. Because it reflects sort of what we're used to today. We don't have a one single all-knowing person to go to for everything.
I'd like to have one.
Just one?
Yeah, like a god who's going to answer everything.
That would be a little bit overwhelming to me, but that's my personal opinion, right? But I mean, it's very actually interesting to think about this. If it's one, and if it's based on archetypes, maybe it's able to evolve and kind of become different personalities as it interacts with you. Because someone that is a great assistant has very different qualities and interacts with you very differently than someone that is a tour guide and takes you on crazy expeditions. So like these different services, or someone that is your health coach would be very different than someone that's it's your nurse or a caregiver. So to be effective, I think either you have to have multiple or you have to be able to switch and kind of morph from one to another.
What are your thoughts on balancing out the rich personality of the AI and actually making it more to the point and more, let's say, transactional? Because my experience, and there's some research also, shows that people try to break them. People try to drill down where they can't go, and then they'll try to insult them, and that's usually the first kind of interaction. So the more personality, the more story you give, the more risks you run of actually getting into dead ends. And also, like Microsoft did with their robot, they kind of gave too much power to the users, and we know how it ended.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is actually establishing a set of principles that this system goes by and obeys, right? That wasn't the fact for Toya, but I think it has to be part of any type of design, and I completely agree. And what you read today, you would take this step. It's a very divergent step. Right? At some point, you have to actually converge, because maybe it's like any characters. If it becomes way too colorful, it sort of becomes not realistic and not relevant to you as a person. So I would think about it the same way. You will have some sort of personality, and maybe that personality is very to the point and very effective. Simplified, exactly. So what we did here today, a lot of them were colorful because we were trying to exaggerate them in some ways. But you would take the process just like in your design, you would converge, and if that functionality, and I think this is why the purpose is super important. And so if you were writing a character story, the purpose would be the goal of the character, what he wants to achieve in life. But if you're designing a system, you would start with the purpose, because that kind of defines the functionality. And if the functionality is very straightforward and directed and condensed, then that would reflect throughout all of those elements. Does it answer your question? Like a what? Like a book character, yeah.
Okay. So we have like 5 minutes for a few questions.
Yeah.
And then another batch, another tour of land is gonna come. So first question is here.
I have similar questions to before, somehow connected. You name here the absolute names that big players are using right now. what do you think that's giving the power to the user? For example, to make them the personas of those related to the reality. So for their family members that pass away, or friend from the primary school that you really hate and you want to shout on him, for example. So make some kind of, as you pointed out in the beginning probably, some kind of psychological connection to the relationship and the persona. What do you think about?
I completely agree with that direction. I think they're just constrained by what's feasible at the moment, right? That's why a lot of them start with just a single name and you can rename it. I think this is what you're referring to. Like if I get a AI and it's Alexa, I could rename it whatever I want, correct? And give it maybe character traits. So, very great question. Personally, this is what I would like to see. What I would like to see is not a ready system that it's defined to the level that's final. I would like to see a system that the unboxing, it is sort of like this thing comes to life for the first time. And maybe it has some behaviors obviously programmed, but you go through the process of kind of unlocking them, and then they reveal to you in, just like in a game, level by level. So you get to know this device, but also you get to teach it. I think this is when I talked about the symbiosis and the fact that these systems don't know everything, and we're running into limits, and that's what you see when people interact with these systems. They get frustrated, or it just becomes kind of a comedic type of interaction. It's because they don't know. They're not capable of that level of interaction just yet. So I think giving this functionality that you teach it. And you kind of help form its personality. I think this is like the future that I would like to see. Yes, great. Yeah. So if it obviously that would be the best way. Yes, great. So actually. Taps into all your networks and your personality as it exists out there, and kind of creates, that's what you're describing, right? Creates like a foundation, like a baby out of that, right? Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think the fact that actually Facebook is probably creating the most, right now, it seems like the most effective AI, and it is this kind of idea of a symbiosis, because the way they are able to do this, it's in beta, but the way they are doing it right is that the systems have limitation, and usually in all the other systems that you come across these limitations very quickly, and then you get frustrated, because if Echo can't answer my question, I'll just give up. I'm not even going to try. However, what Facebook is doing is they actually put in place people. So when that system comes to the point where it doesn't know where to go or search on its own, it will reach out to people, and people in the back end will fulfill that task. So you as a front end user, you don't necessarily see that, or maybe see the difference, but there's no disruption in service.
I've seen a hand here.
Hi. I'm another question relating a little bit to the level of detail of the personality. So when I was doing this exercise, I found myself projecting my own cultural values and experiences onto the type of character that we were building, and filling in a lot of the blanks. And I'm wondering if you see this as a positive or negative thing, that we create these very rich personalities as individuals to allow multiple people to have a stronger connection with a slightly more abstract being, or whether it should be a totally defined being with its own sort of very specific personality?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it goes back to your questions earlier, that right now, because it was a quick exercise, we designed it for ourselves. So you wrote a letter to something in your life, right? So it reflects it, you were the reflection of the end user. If you are actually designing it for the end user, you would first form a definition of what defines a persona for that user, and what their cultural heritage is, what their needs are, what they would like to see. and you first have to popularize that within your team or involve stakeholders, and based on that, you have to create that persona. So it's not as easy of a step, right? You do need to go through still quite a bit of research. However, I think when you start, and like I said, each one of those, there is a set of principle you can follow to kind of guide you through the process. So when you think about language, and this is actually a thing that I've been practicing for quite a few months, what's helpful is actually hear people of how they speak. People have such a different way of communicating. When you start designing for the system, you sort of don't know how, like, it's a threshold you have to cross, right? Because it's a machine, so you start thinking it's like very efficient, direct way machine would communicate. To think about this machine communicated in more of a humanized way, it's very difficult because you only know, like you only, not know, but you only are aware of the way you talk. So it's actually helpful is, like, let's say you're sitting in a restaurant and you're sitting on your own, just write down like sentences, phrases, how people communicate, different things. And that could create almost like a source for you to then go back if you're designing, especially voice. I mean, that's big. it's going to become the next interface over visual, right? So we have to figure out how to use language and how to use language in different cultures, in different cultural backgrounds, different regions, and so forth. Absolutely. Oh.
Well, can you share with us how you do research to actually target the personality well for a certain culture?
It depends. I don't know if it's different than the way you do it. I don't think we do anything special, but we do very much focus on the extreme users first. And if it was extreme, if we were designing something for a very different market, then we would go and experience this market as deeply as we can, right? For Japan, right? So either you will go and live there or observe and shadow. You'll go through very similar. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the ethnographic research, but it's very much go into the field and experience it firsthand and live through it. If you can't do that, then bring the users to you. I've done this before in other companies where we would actually bring in the extreme users, and they became part of the team and going through the entire process with us. We actually have done it for a couple of our projects where we're designing something that was not very easy to understand or empathize with service or a product. This was more of an industrial context. So for that purpose, we actually hired people that they were not designers, they were not engineers, they were not business strategists. They were the users that have interacted, and we actually would bring them on the team. And they're the ones that not only help guide of what the product and service needs to be like, but also we would actually use the way they describe things to put that in our taxonomy and so forth. So it's very much like the closer you can get with the user, besides just the rapid iteration and testing, the better. You have to have a little bit larger budget, but better effects.
I think that's we have to close it. But I hope you're gonna stay with us for the rest of the day. Yeah. So the lunch should be here. I have one more announcement about the survey I was mentioning before. So download the app if you don't have it yet, Inventory, and you can take a survey in there. The survey is about your experience on MCE, on the event. And first 150 people that's going to take the survey are able to win our t-shirt. But why is it more important is that we would really like to know your opinion on the MCE. And another thing is that Inventory, the app, is founded by our friends from Krakow, and they are like young startup, and they also want you to, they would like you to have that app. So do that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm from Krakow. I'll do it. Support. Yeah. Thank you all very much.